Welcome back, Endgame community. I'm Pierre, here to help you with fantasy baseball once again. Let's talk about some players that are just not worth holding on to. Like I always give you every week some guys that you should pick up off the waiver wire, and now it's time to figure out who to drop. But I'm going to talk about some players that you drafted, some fairly high, and you just maybe been holding on to, clinging to hope that they'll come around, that they'll perform like they did last year. I'm just going to tell you it's not happening. All right, I'm going to start off with Trevor Rogers of the Miami Marlins. Let's just rip the Band-Aid right off. Look, this one hurts me. You know, as a Marlins fan, one of those exciting young pitchers. The one thing the Marlins do well is to develop young pitching. Sandy Alcantara is a bona fide ace. Might even win the Cy Young this year. He deserves it right now. But Trevor Rogers, it took a major step back. He was a breakout performer last year. Kind of a league winner because he wasn't drafted, wasn't really high on the radar, and this year it's like it's all gone. It's just gone. So somehow he's gone to a 5.83 ERA, and it's not a matter of bad luck. This isn't an Alex Cobb type situation. He's earned his bad numbers. He has an xERA of 5.04. He cannot find the strike zone very well. The command is just not there. This is someone who has an 11.2% walk rate. And if you see his heat map, his fastball has been the main problem. You know, not that he ever had an elite fastball. His velocity is just okay. It's 94, which nowadays is just okay. It's not amazing, but he at least was commanding it well, mixing it with a changeup. This year, it's been complete reversal. He just can't find it. His fastball's all over the place. Last year, that four-seam fastball had a run value of -15. It was really good. This year it's +7. So it's that one pitch, and that's the pitch he leans on the most, over 50%. So that's a problem when you can't throw strikes. And his strikeout rate has come down also with it significantly. Last year was above average in terms of strikeouts, and now this year down to 19%. Okay, so his whip, his ERA, to lack of strikeouts even, he's just killing you across the board. And look, until he finds it and gets it together, you can't keep him. You can't keep clinging to last year. Remember, this is not a guy with an extended history of success. So I think he eventually will figure it out, but this year he looks lost. And so until we see a major course correction, I just don't think you can keep it in your rotation, and there's no point stashing him on the bench. All right, let's talk about another hard-throwing lefty who has just not been himself since he got to San Diego. Blake Snell. Does he just hate the West Coast? I don't know what it is. You thought that going to San Diego would be a good thing for him, but it just hasn't. He hasn't looked like the same pitcher. Look, maybe we chalk it up to health, but it's been 2 full seasons now, and really the issue is just his command isn't there. This guy who did have, if you remember, before his Cy Young year, had a lot of issues walking, and all of a sudden got corrected. So right now he's 0-4, 5.46 ERA, 1.45 whip, and the K rate is down to the 70th percentile. This is a guy who, at the very least, even last year, when he wasn't very good and he was hurting you in terms of ERA and whip, and he was walking batters, but he was also striking out batters. At least you could pile up the Ks with him in your lineup. You can't even do that anymore. Not a single win, really. Maybe it's a physical thing. Maybe it's a mental thing. At this point, I don't care. I cannot keep rolling with him and having him actively hurt my team. So Blake Snell, you're just going to have to cut ties because nobody's going to trade for him right now. All right, the next pitcher I want to talk about is Rangers Suarez. So for the Philadelphia Phillies, he was a revelation last year, waiver wire pickup late in the season. Guy who was in the bullpen and all of a sudden joined the rotation because he was being so effective last year, pitched to a 1.36 ERA. It's really amazing. Look at his season end stats, one of the best pitchers in the game, and that really came out of nowhere. Well, guess what? It's back to being out of nowhere because this year he's just been a mediocre pitcher. Now, he hasn't been terrible, not nearly like the guys I've already mentioned. So he's at least kept his ERA under 5. Right now it's 4.43, but that's not helping you. And he's also never been really a high strikeout guy. That number from last year has gone back down. So a lot of people are still holding on to him just because you drafted him somewhat high. You thought he'd be in your rotation all year. You expected something close to last year. It's not happening. So I'm just going to say there's really no reason to hold on to him at this point. All right, let's go with another Philly, this time a reliever. You might have heard Corey Knebel, no longer the closer. I told you a couple weeks ago to go out and pick up Sir Anthony Dominguez. Looks like he will be the new closer again. Knebel was brought on, expected to be the guy, and he was the guy. Look, he's got 11 saves on the year. He was helping you out until a couple of weeks ago when he lost the job after a couple of really bad outings. And you know what? Since getting demoted, he isn't earning it back. In fact, it's been the opposite. The problem is he also cannot find the strike zone. His 15.4% walk rate, that is going to be the 2 percentile of the league, one of the worst. He has 4 blown saves to go with those 11 saves. So this is not someone that you can trust. I wouldn't hold on hoping that he gets a job back, because you know what? Even if he does get the job back, either by default or somehow working his way back up to it, there's a good chance he loses it again or blows some more saves and hurts your team more than it helps. So, you know what? If you really are desperate for saves, I'd search for them elsewhere. And then a guy who's been one of the most dependable closers for years in different teams, different situations, that's Mark Melancon. And you know what? He's not that player anymore. Although you look at it and say, well, he does have 11 saves. He does lead the Diamondbacks in that category. And he hasn't necessarily lost the job, but he also hasn't picked up a save since June 3rd. He's been used sparingly, and it's hard to say what they're really doing. They don't have a kind of a young closer in waiting. They do have a guy who's been a lot more effective than Melancon, and that's Joe Mantiply. And he's somebody who is going to be more valuable in fantasy these days. So the problem with Melancon, yeah, he still might pick up the odd save here and there. Who knows if he becomes the de facto closer for the rest of the year. He's doing more harm than good. A 5.79 ERA, 1.62 whip, and he's never been a high strikeout guy, even for a closer. Well, even less so this year. You can't look at a guy who has a less than 20% strikeout rate and say that's a guy I want at the 9th inning. So at this point, Melancon, I'd say you ditch him and you move on. All right, so those are some of the players that I think you should just move on from. Some pitchers that it's just time to give the axe and look for something better. Who should you pick up instead? Well, check out my waiver wire options every single week here to try to help you get ahead of the game. All right, guys, thanks for watching.